So we are streaming live on Facebook right now, everyone. So if everyone could go to Facebook and go to Free Hearts to share the live stream to their Facebook page, that'd be great. So for those that have not, I will give everyone a second to do that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So I just want to say good evening to everyone. My name is Keita Haynes, and I am the Senior Legal Counsel at Free Hearts. And on behalf of myself and all of the panelists that are here with me tonight, we would like to say thank you for taking the time to listen to us this evening and to engage with us about our concerns that we have for our family, our friends, and our loved ones across the state of Tennessee. So just a little bit of background information about who we are at Free Hearts. Free Hearts is a Tennessee statewide organization that is led by formerly incarcerated women, and we provide support, education, and advocacy in organizing families that are impacted by incarceration with the ultimate goal of reuniting families and keeping families together. We believe in meeting the direct needs and doing direct services with families that are directly impacted by incarceration in jails, juvenile detention facilities, prisons, schools, and in the community. We also do participatory defense, and we work to change policies that impact our families and our loved ones as well. We fight to decarcerate and divest from incarcerating our loved ones and to invest in our communities and community-based solutions. Last year at Free Hearts, we passed a community-based alternative to incarceration for primary caregivers, where we were the second in the state in the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls to pass the law, and it is pending in 11 more states. We currently have campaigns around decriminalizing poverty, Love and Justice Project, Restoring the Vote, Free the Vote, legalizing marijuana, and storytelling for public policy. We are also participating in the national campaign called Clemency Works with the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. So April, which is the month that we're in, which is almost over. We've blinked and April is over now, but April is National Second Chance Month. And considering the times that we're in right now with COVID, a lot has not been said about Second Chance Month. But generally, the president declares April Second Chance Month, and governors usually announce it and make a proclamation. Governor Lee, he has participated in this in the past. And so, we're just going to operate as if he has done that again this year, because it is important for us to be having conversations around second chances. So the second chance conversations that are generally had around the country are traditionally heavily on reentry, but we want to go beyond that. And we want to make the second chance conversation not just about reentry, but about decarceration in these times with COVID-19 and beyond. Decarceration is a government policy of reducing either the number of people in prison or the rate of imprisonment in a given jurisdiction. It may also be described as a process of removing people from institutions such as prisons or mental hospitals. It is the exact opposite of incarceration. Now, we are all aware that we are living in unprecedented times right now. We have a global pandemic that has shut down businesses, cities, and even entire countries. And millions of people are at risk of becoming infected and dying from COVID-19. And we've already seen that. And this just makes, what we are doing even more relevant to the state of Tennessee. And while many of us have taken the necessary steps to protect ourselves and our families and our vulnerable communities, incarcerated people are being left out of the conversations. As COVID-19 continues to progress throughout the country, it is also rapidly spreading throughout our jails and prisons. A story came out just last week in the Tennessean that said, as of Friday afternoon, 3,682 tests have been performed across all TDOC facilities, Of those, 666 had tested positive, with an additional 196 tests still pending after a weekend of mass testing. On Monday, TDOC confirmed that 162 cases at the Bledsoe location. And since then, the agency has reported at least 576 cases with 73 tests still pending. And there was even an article today, I posted about it on my Facebook and Twitter, and I know some other people posted about it, that said that Bledsoe has become one of the hotspots in the entire United States. And that's a big problem. We've talked about that and warned about that for a while. And it's the things that we were concerned about, we are now seeing become a reality. We all know that prisons are high density areas where social distancing is impossible. The conditions can be unsanitary. The medical treatment is not the best. And there are a large number of people in prison that are vulnerable because of their age and their health as well. And the dangers that are posed by COVID-19 are not just limited to prisoners, but the staff and the vendors will also be impacted as well. This is sure to be costly to the Tennessee Department of Corrections as well as the state of Tennessee as a whole. As I mentioned, COVID-19 has already entered the prisons, the TDOC, and it is expected to spread very quickly if action isn't taken immediately. And we're seeing that right now. Without widespread testing, it is impossible to know just how widespread the virus is amongst the prison population. Now, when we previously asked the governor about testing in the facilities, he stated that prisons will be something that we will look at the right time. But I would say, and I'm sure everyone else on this panel would say, that now is the right time for us to start looking at what is going on in the prisons. So I just want to stop now and just say for everyone that is on, if you haven't yet, please go to Facebook/freehearts.org to share this live stream on your Facebook page. We will start off with an interactive poll, and then we will start the panel. So here's the question for the poll. Have you ever needed a second chance? I know I have. Okay, so now we're going to transition to this panel with some amazing people that that I am very honored to be on this panel with virtually this evening. And so we're going to start the important conversation around second chances and decarceration and COVID-19 and beyond. Each panelist will give just a brief introduction as to who they are. And if you have any questions for them, please put them in the chat and we will answer the questions at the end if time permits. And the only thing that we would ask of you guys is that you not use words like inmate, offender, convict, prisoner, or defendant. Instead, we would like to use language that humanizes our loved ones and our family and friends that are incarcerated. And so we would prefer that you would use language such as incarcerated individual, woman or man who is incarcerated, mother, girl, brother, father, son, daughter, or loved one. That is the only ask that we have of you because language matters. And so to kick off our panel, we are going to start with Michelle and Jahara. And so Michelle and Jahara, the question that I have for both of you is that from your life and perspective as formerly incarcerated women, before you were incarcerated, during your incarceration and post-incarceration, why do you feel second chances mean decarceration in times of COVID-19 and beyond? And we'll start with Michelle and then we will move to Jahara.
Hello. Hi. I'm Michelle Chappell. I am a formerly incarcerated woman, mother and grandmother. I come from a small rural town in West Tennessee, and growing up, there was absolutely no types of programs outside of school activities or church. We didn't have school counselors back then or any type of mentors. And really, in small rural West Tennessee, not much has changed. While we now have school counselors, they're spread extremely thin. and their attention is more so given to those that are in the upper percentile. Somebody say something?
Sorry, I'm sharing this to my page.
Okay. So there again, because they are spread so thin, their attention is addressed more toward the upper percentile and the higher achieving students. And we do not have anything like a YMCA or boys club or girls club, close by. You have to drive well over an hour to get to any type of facility, program, stuff like that. The result of this is that our youth, basically their first chance has been diminished. Our youth get involved in drinking and drugs, which increases the dropout rate and teen pregnancy and decreases the likelihood of them continuing any type of education. The typical timeline for juvenile issues, it starts out, they have issues with authority, end up in toxic relationships, and then as adults, they end up with legal trouble, addictions, mental health issues, and a loss of motivation if they were to have any to begin with. We are a county of single parents. The majority are below the poverty lines. And for the most part, these parents don't foresee the ability for their child to even continue their education because they can't afford it. And there again, we have no type of guidance and programs in place to help, the youth. During my incarceration, I witnessed this vicious cycle of childhood type trauma, absent parenting, and again, I became acutely aware that the system was only victimizing these again. The system doesn't offer any type of rehabilitation. An incarcerated person must seek this out for themselves through self-help books and, kind of find their own way in the system. There are classes that are offered through education and therapy type classes, but they're very thin. And while these are offered, the priority there again is given to those with a shorter sentence. So the majority of our incarcerated people spend their time on waiting lists, trying to do something to gain some skills to better themselves and to reduce the recidivism rate and the likelihood of going back to old habits when they get out. Second chances are the first step in success. No one gets anything right the first time. A second chances usually work, because a person has already learned what doesn't work and what not to do. And they've now found the self-motivation to work toward a better life. Everyone makes mistakes, but that should never mean that they should have to pay for that mistake for the rest of their life. Right now, with the COVID-19 going on, incarceration is potentially a death sentence. First and foremost, those incarcerated do not deserve to die for a crime in which the sentence was not a death sentence. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely no way to implement social distancing within the facilities, and staff is not going to sanitize as needed, nor allow the proper disinfectants to be used by those that are incarcerated. They're not going to go in there and sanitize the showers after each person showers. So it's going to spread. Right now is the prime time to allow for second chances, especially in light of COVID-19. It would accomplish two things, much needed tasks to be accomplished simultaneously. First, it would save lives. And second, it would give those second chances to those much deserving of such, while their motivation to succeed is in high gear. Our incarcerated loved ones right now are in fear for their life. They have no control. They can't socially distance. You have 2 to 4 people in an 8 by 10 cell.
Mm-hmm.
There is no social distancing in there. We need community-based programs to prevent this cycle from beginning, or to prevent this cycle from beginning to start with our youth. And then we need community solutions to help those that are being released. Give them a second chance. Give them a hand up, not a hand out. Show them the ways and the steps to take to be successful so that they do not violate and go back or commit new crimes and go back.
Okay, Michelle, thank you so much for that perspective. And now we will move to Miss Jahara. And Jahara, I have the same question for you that I had for Michelle. And it's from your life and your perspective as someone that is formerly incarcerated. Why do you feel second chances are important? And talk about what that means as far as decarceration during this COVID-19 time.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. So it was just basically from your perspective as someone who's been formerly incarcerated, talk about why second chances are important and talk about why decarceration is important now during this particular time with COVID-19.
Okay, so I'm formerly incarcerated woman. I did 3 years and 7 months. Prior to that, I was a troubled child. I used to get in trouble a lot growing up. I had a lot of domestic violence surrounding my life growing up or whatever. And I feel like what led me into incarceration was being bullied a lot in school and feeling like I had to prove something to people. And so I felt like I needed to protect myself. And so that turned into violence and I ended up getting in trouble. Fast forwarded to while I was incarcerated, I always felt like I had to defend myself. So like the lack of medical care that they have is not good. We didn't have a counselor or a therapist or anything there. We did have mental health services. And so I created a support group within the facility because I told them how important it was for us to have some type of mental health services while we were incarcerated. And so just knowing that they charge you for medical, they charge you for medicine, it's kind of scary, you know, being incarcerated, knowing that you're not going to get the proper medical care that you need. And when I was there between 2010 and between 2010 and 2013. And while I was there, they had a serious outbreak of hepatitis. And so that is still going on now. And so I can just only imagine those people that are infected with hepatitis, how they're being affected with this COVID-19. And I know for a fact that they were not taken care of. So I just feel like people need to have a second chance because it's important that we save our fellow brothers and sisters from dying in jail. And I don't feel like, you know, you did something, it doesn't involve you to die in jail due to health difficulties.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answer, Jahara. And so far, we all pretty much, you know, we're hearing the same theme is that people, you know, they go to prison for something and they shouldn't end up with a death sentence. And so that's very important because, you know, that is the common theme is that, you know, we have people not only that are in prison, but also people that are in jail who haven't even been convicted of anything, who, you know, are just there because they can't afford to make a bond and, you know, they could possibly end up with a life sentence. So thank you, ladies, for your perspective there. And so next we're going to move to Ashley. And so, Ashley, my question for you is that from your perspective as, a young girl who was transferred to adult court and was incarcerated for over 20 years, can you talk about why it is important for people that have been formerly incarcerated to have second chance, and what decarceration means for our youth that are in juvenile facilities during this time as well?
Yeah, thanks, Keita. My name is Ashley Sellers. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I would say that I spent almost 3 years incarcerated as a kid waiting for trial. Right, I hadn't been found guilty of anything. The circumstances that we were put in was extreme overcrowding, lack of medical care. Those are circumstances that are still available today, not only in the jails with adults, but with our kids. When we look at kids who aren't able to, under normal circumstances, be in attendance or have social protocols, like they've been social distancing their entire incarceration, right? They've been removed from society. They've been removed from being able to just have normal interactions and normal development, both physically, mentally, socially, like all of those things. So when we think about COVID-19 coming into those facilities, you're diminishing the opportunity for those youth who may be innocent to be able to live a normal life. You're diminishing the possibility of them living a healthy life. We don't necessarily, this is still so early that we don't even know, for individuals that contract this disease and then are healed from it, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know if a year from now there's scarring in the lungs. We don't know what that's going to look like, right? And so it's urgent that if we know that this is coming, that we remove them from those situations so that we can give them a chance at life. This may be a first chance, right? These kids could genuinely be innocent.
Mm-hmm.
We also want to look at, there are certain survivors, there are certain people with relationships to my case, right? I have a family, I have a victim's family. The way that my case was processed through the system, the family was told something that that wasn't accurate, right? They were given a media perspective of my case, so that family wasn't allowed to be able to have the knowledge that they would need in order to want maybe a decision or a judgment that was accurate. So I think that diminishes that as well. And then just moving forward and seeing that the things that people have learned during their incarceration, the majority of those individuals come out and say, like, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. I want to help my family. I want to help the next person so they aren't harming someone else in the community or being harmed. Just continuing to give them the tools that they need to be able to rebuild and heal our community as a whole.
Okay, thank you for that perspective, Ashley. And next I want to move to Miss Alana. Alana, can you tell us how old you are?
Yes, I'm 17 years old.
Okay, you're such a baby. Okay, and so can you just give us, from your perspective as a young lady who was incarcerated, but who was actually given a second chance because your case wasn't transferred to adult court, and just talk about what that meant for you and how you think that could impact, the youth that are still there, as far as like not really transferring a lot of these cases, but keeping them in juvenile. Like, how does that give them a second chance?
Okay, so I will start off by saying, like you said, I was formerly incarcerated, but I was actually given a third chance, because my second chance, I honestly screwed that up. I ruined it all the way. But when I gave my third chance, it felt, knowing that when they actually told me I was getting a chance to actually get out and do good, it made me want to actually do better. Before that, I was just thinking, well, they're just going to keep me for as long as they can. So I lost all motivation in myself, which made me do things worse, which is why I feel like everybody should be able to know that they have a second chance, because in all honesty, incarceration isn't doing anything to help anybody at all. They say they sent me to DCS for a rehabilitation center, but even then, it's not rehabilitating anything. It's the exact same thing as it is for prisons and everything else. It's like they're not really helping. They send people on the outside to come on the inside to try to see what's going on when you can't do that. That's not how it works. People say that I've matured and they said incarceration was the reason that I did it, but honestly, that's not what made me mature and made me want to better myself. It was the people that was in my corner helping me throughout the way. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be today, actually, because the place I was at, it was bad. It was actually horrible. So it was like if I didn't have those people with me, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. I didn't even really turn my life around until about 2 months before they actually let me come home. And that was because I just gave up. I lost all hope in myself because I thought I wasn't going to be able to get my second chance. I felt like I was being punished for a mistake that I made. And I feel like I was going to keep getting punished for it, which means I know there's other people who's incarcerated that's going through the exact same situation. They feel like they're losing motivation in themselves because they feel like they don't have a second chance. And that's why everybody in the world needs a second chance, regardless of anything. So what makes incarcerated men and women any different? We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. So I feel like everybody needs that chance to have the second chance and do better, because if not, they're just incarcerated, and if they want to do better, they can't because of the place that they're at. Most people don't have that love or consistency that they need. Me, I was lucky that I got that love and consistency, because if it wasn't, I don't know where I'd be. Therefore, I feel like this whole community as a whole needs to spread more love, consistency, and care rather than spreading hate, negativity, and downgrading others for what they've done, because that doesn't do anything but make it worse. If everybody is all one and come together and try to help everybody and figure out why that person's doing what they're doing, it will be so much better. The crime rate will probably decrease tremendously because we're actually getting to the bottom of why it's happening, not what they're doing. So yeah, that's why I feel like it should.
Oh, girl, preach it, girl, preach it, honey. You are so young, but so full of wisdom and knowledge. There, you said a mouthful. I was trying to write down some of the stuff you were saying, but you was just on the roll with it. I love it. I love what you said, because you said some very important things about sometimes people need more than a second chance. Sometimes people do need a third chance or a fourth chance, and we need to extend the grace to people. And then you talked about, how, we shouldn't be bound, by the mistakes that we made. That's critical, because a lot of times we feel like that we walk around with essentially a scarlet F on our chest, and we're constantly being held accountable for, things that have happened that happened years and years and years ago, and that was important. But one of the things that you really, really talked about that was really important was about, the support, because that's the thing. And that's one of the things that I always talk about is that, the community has to be a second chance community. And right now, Nashville is not a second chance community. And so we can't even really talk about people making successful transitions back into the community until we can talk about them actually being successful. So yes, honey, you were on it. Yes. We're going to have you back on our next panels. But we got to keep moving on. And so next we're going to move to Ronnie. And so, Ronnie, the question that I have for you is, it's a little different because you were the daughter of, someone who was incarcerated for many years, and now you are a social worker and a mental health counselor that work with incarcerated women and girls. So you have a different perspective there. So we'd just like to hear, like, from your perspective, like, what do you think second chances mean, and talk about decarceration during this time now as well, too.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, like Keita said, my name is Ronnie, and I am a master level therapist, and I have a degree in social work as well. I'm the daughter of a formerly incarcerated dad, and I just think second chances as a whole, when given to incarcerated people, it gives back to the family dynamic. When people are taken away from their family, that kind of put a hole and a strain on the family and on the other family members. And I just think that a lot of people don't take into consideration like how that impacts the family members. When my dad was arrested, he was sentenced to 15 years on his first offense. and he did 10 years, and they did let him out on good behavior. So I was able to get a second chance as with my father. But, most people don't get that when their parents is, disrupted from their home. And then there's a lot of other things that fall on to the parent that is left there and could change in that family dynamic. Like, I watched how my mother finances kind of changed when my dad left, and how the living, environment changed when he wasn't there. And I think that is something that we need to be mindful of when you are disrupting families, and not understanding like how the environment like plays a role in that aspect. In my work with formerly incarcerated people, I kind of work with the individual, and I also work with the family as well, because like I said, it's one in a whole, and it's connected. So when one person is being affected by it, it leaves a trail of other people, being impacted by that. I don't think people really understand that when a family member, especially a parent, is, removed, the child kind of loses different opportunities to learn from that parent. And then you go to, the streets or your community or other people for different influences, where you usually could get those same advices from your parents.
Yeah, those are some good things that you just said there, Ronnie. And I think a lot of people really don't take into account how incarceration does impact the entire family. I think those of us that are on here that have been formerly incarcerated, we definitely saw that it wasn't just us that was doing the time. Our families were having to do the time with us as well too. And it's something that my mom always talks about, how me going to prison impacted her. How incarceration impacts family members, that's something that we definitely need to be having more conversations around. And so thank you for that perspective. And so next I will move to Mr. Preston. Preston Ship, he is an advocate and a minister, but he was also a former district attorney. And so we would just like to hear his perspective as someone that was a former district attorney, why he feels that second chances are important. So Preston, take it away.
Thank you, Keita. It's good to see you. It's good to see other folks on here as well. So yeah, as you said, my background, I was a prosecutor for several years, went to law school to be a prosecutor because I was a big believer in law and order and public safety and victims' rights and all those things. But then got involved in prison ministry and prison education initiatives. And that really kind of spun me around. I think proximity, like Brian Stevenson says, when you're proximate to people, that really changes your perspective. And so, getting to know folks, not just by virtue of the crime that they committed, but the people that they were, the people that they had become, that they certainly, all people have the ability to transcend bad moments and bad decisions when they're given a second chance. So I would just make three kind of quick points. I would say from a public health standpoint, allowing jails and prisons to continue to be overcrowded, especially during this time, makes all of us less safe because they are just like powder kegs for this virus. You mentioned Bledsoe earlier. Up in Ohio, Marion County Correctional is showing us just how dramatically the virus can spread among people who are in such close quarters. Staff is getting it and taking it into their community, which is just putting everybody at risk. So now is certainly the time to be thinking about getting as many people out of prison as possible. Second point, kind of related to that, is that we have this moment where people are talking more and more about decarceration because it does put us all at risk. It's not a fringe conversation anymore that just a few people are having, and it's not. And in some instances it is, but people are recognizing this is not something that should be limited to nonviolent, low-level drug offenders, that's not going to put a dent in it. And so even Nancy Pelosi, earlier today, I saw she referenced Matthew chapter 25 and the need to do unto folks who are locked up, as you would do unto the Lord. But she mentioned that there's a lot of people in prisons and jails that don't need to be, whether they're pre-trial because they're too poor to afford bail, which of course Raheem can talk about, or whether they are serving long sentences for nonviolent offenses, drug offenses, whether it's because they're elderly and medically vulnerable, or just because they've been in so long, 20 or 25 or 30 years. These people statistically pose the least risk of committing new offenses. And we need to be thinking about getting them out, not just in this time of emergency, but, you know, after the pandemic passes, you know, this conversation needs to continue. We need to think critically about who are we unnecessarily warehousing, and why are we doing it? Why are we spending that kind of money? Then lastly, quickly, the third thing that I would say is that part of what's so hard about having this conversation about decarceration is that while we refer to it as the Department of Correction and not the Department of Punishment, punishment tends to be the reason, you know, that we put people in for such long periods of time, which is a betrayal, really, of what we should be doing. You know, we recognize in the language we use about rehabilitation that people deserve second chances, but we reduce justice to this zero-sum game where I have to choose between feeling compassion for a victim and feeling compassion for someone who has caused harm. And justice is just bigger than that. If I really care about public safety, I'm going to care about rehabilitation. When I feel compassion for victims, I'm going to recognize that a lot of the times that people who commit crimes have also been victims themselves. So I think we need to get to a point when we're talking about decarceration where we recognize that to care about the future of people who are in prison does not diminish our concern for victims or public safety. Justice is not offended by second chances. Once a person's been held accountable and has been rehabilitated, justice requires second chances now and especially going forward.
All right, Preston, those were good points right there. I just wrote down, justice is not offended by second chances. I love that. I love that because I think that in the community, people are always trying to balance, do we give people a second chance? And then, you know, justice and victim rights and stuff like that. So it was good to hear that. And then it was good for you to, you know, even follow up to say that justice demands second chance. Like, I love that. Like, I got chills when you said that. And of course, you quoted, like, you know, Brian Stevenson. I always talk about proximity, you know, because I just don't feel like that we really can even start having these conversations unless we are proximate, you know what I'm saying, to the problems and to the people, you know, that are experiencing these issues. And so those were excellent points there. And so I want to thank you for those points. And next we will move on to Dr. Jennifer Gaddy. And Dr. Gaddy has a PhD in research at Vanderbilt, and she specializes in infectious diseases. And so just wanted to get your perspective on second chances and why you think second chances is important, and particularly why you think that it is important to decarcerate prisons and jails during this time of COVID-19 and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. So can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So my name's Jen, and I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And first, I want to thank everybody for inviting me to talk. But secondly, I talk a little bit about public health because that's kind of what I do. My PhD is in microbiology, and I specialize in molecular genetics. I work on how infections happen and what sort of environmental conditions and host factors like the immune system predispose somebody to getting an infection. And I'm really passionate about decarceration as a public health strategy. But before I dig into that, I first just want to say that I think more than public health is underscoring that the people trapped in prison systems are human beings and they deserve a quality of life as well. And so everything that Alina and Ashley and Jahara and Michelle, all of them said, I just want to amplify everything they said. The weight of truth is just there for prisoners. Okay. And I couldn't say it better myself. But it's critical for us to sort of see prisons for what they are, which they aren't an institution of public safety. They are actually an Achilles heel in our public safety and our public health. And the reason that they are is because, and we've known this for hundreds of years is that prisons have a blast radius where they originate infectious diseases. And we've seen this with cholera, we've seen it with flu, we've seen it with chicken pox and scabies and bed bugs and everything. And there's a whole field of infectious diseases of people who study outbreaks for prisons. So basically, there's really nice models where they've seen that there's a blast radius of like 5.7 kilometers around a prison where infections just walk out with staff, okay? So with COVID-19, because we're seeing rates of mortality that are so much higher than flu, and we're also seeing hospitalization rates that are super high for these infections, and when you compound that with the fact that the human beings that are held hostage in these facilities are a natively immunocompromised population for a variety of reasons. They have complicated health problems. Somebody also earlier mentioned that we don't have access. I think it was Ashley mentioned that the healthcare wasn't very good. And I've seen this firsthand because I've gone into prisons and done some infection control education. And, I would describe the healthcare that I saw there as barbaric, honestly. So you don't have good healthcare because the people that are in these facilities are seen as a disposable class of human beings, okay? What we have as a consequence of that sort of attitude is this massive problem with public health. In the United States, the largest outbreak right now of COVID-19 is associated with Cook County Jail in Chicago, okay? So again, this is an Achilles heel. Bledsoe, somebody talked about that today. And the Ohio facility, where last time I checked this morning, there were 1,700 incarcerated individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19. So I wrote an op-ed in the Tennessean recently because I grew tired of asking elected officials, begging them to see this as a public health risk for what it is. We're going to see these massive outbreaks that are happening. Staff are going to carry it into the facilities. It's going to spread like wildfire in these very vulnerable populations. Prisoners have higher rates of coronary disease, of diabetes, of autoimmune disorders, and other immunocompromised. It's going to spread. Staff are going to carry it back out, and it's going to affect our communities. So, and then those individuals that are going to have to be hospitalized are going to overwhelm our healthcare capacity. And we have a finite number of beds. We have a finite number of ventilators for these. And so we have to see this as a public health risk as well. I think it's important too, and I'd like to underscore this for the people who are talking. I hear a lot of scientists that keep saying, yeah, we understand that prisons are a linchpin, but then they just will not talk about decarceration. And I'm sort of like really advocating full-throated decarceration. And the reason I am is because we have too many people in these facilities to start with, okay? We have, obviously we have 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population. So we need to be letting a lot of people go, number one, just as a baseline, even after this COVID-19 epidemic is over. We come up against a lot of cultural inertia, I think, where people automatically think that it's a public safety risk to let people out of these facilities, but it's a public safety risk to leave people in them and to have these outbreaks. So I think that it's important for us to really state that as infectious disease professionals, that keeping the people in is less safe than letting them out for everybody. It's hard to do, I think, because keeping people in these facilities is heavily monetized and a lot of people profit off of that. And I don't just mean the for-profit prison systems, but just having bodies in there and then charging $1 per minute for them to get phone calls and things like that, the commissary and other things that you can really rake people over the coals for. So I think that speaking, full-throated decarceration is absolutely necessary, but you're going to come up against some inertia with that. And we have to combat that with good science saying that it's a health risk for us to keep these people in these facilities where we cannot do social distancing, and their quarantine facilities are suboptimal. I spoke with Sheriff Darren Hall Darren Hall was testifying because he wants to decarcerate part of his population in the Davidson County Jail. And he was talking about how they don't have adequate PPE for the people that were in the facility. And basically they had to get PPE from Jay-Z. And when our supply chain is like a wrapper, and that's our supply chain for our prisons, that's just not an adequate way. It's not an ethical way. It's not adequate. It's not good for public health. So I think those things taken together, if we can simultaneously argue the humanity of the people inside of the facilities and then argue that it's a public health risk for all of us, then decarceration makes good sense logically.
All right, thank you, Dr. Getty, for those points there. Like what you said, you talked about people trapped. You know, they are humans as well, and that it's important for people to understand that this is, you know, a public risk.
It's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so now we're going to move to Wanda. And so, Wanda, my question for you is that from your perspective as the mother of someone who is formerly incarcerated and that is also a criminalized survivor of violence, what is your take on second chances and what does decarceration mean to you during this time?
The Tennessee Prison for Women. What it means to us for her to be given a second chance. She has 2 small children, and I have had the children ever since the baby was 7 months old. So she has already lost most of, you know, their life as far as being involved with them. She has stayed involved as much as she could, but yeah, with telephone calls and cards and, you know, things like this on special days. But her husband is a narcissist, and he had beaten her down to the point that she felt like she had no self-worth, and he had told her she was not able to make any decisions. And he just had her convinced that she was just less than dirt. Well, she had had a 16-year, I believe it was, career with Kroger's. So I know that, you know, she was capable and competent of working. She was the only one in the home that was working. He was supposed to be staying there and taking care of the kids. So for her to be let out and given a second chance would mean the entire world to her, because she wasn't aware. She's been diagnosed with PTSD from the situation of living with him, and she has anxiety, depression. She was not aware that things had gotten to the point that they had gotten. She has taken every class that they would offer her. She has done everything that they have asked her to do to show that, you know, she wants to be the mother that she should be. And really that I have worked all these years to get her returned to her family, to her kids, not her husband, but to her kids. And I've just lost my train of thought. It happens when you hit my age. The only thing that she can do now is to be given a second chance to get out and work with her kids and, you know, be a mother to them and prove that she can be the mother and the stabilizing force that she wants to be. I feel like some decisions that I had made early on in my life, I had divorced their dad, and this caused a lot of problems with her. And she grabbed on to this guy at school, and things just were bad. But there is not a person walking on the face of this earth that has not made some sort of mistake. I don't care how big or how little, it's still a mistake. And I think everybody is deserving of a second chance. They, you know, most of the time, if you give them a second chance, they will prove to you that it either was a mistake, what happened the first time, or that they have worked to improve their life. There's only been one that was ever perfect, and they crucified him. So, yeah, I don't see why we should be holding these people at a higher standard. Now, she did go to the parole meeting with the one gentleman, and he turned her down, and he told her that her reason was that the seriousness of the crime. And he only gave her credit for the 2 years that she has been in prison, when actually she's been there. I think she's been there over 4, but she says 4. So we'll go with that. He said that it would be a injustice to the prison system if she was to be let out now, that she needed to pay for what she had done, when really she hadn't done anything except work. And I think we need to go back a little bit farther, even in our judicial system. We're not all held to the same standards. When you're in court, we were made follow one set of rules, and the DA followed another set of rules. And you could tell from the time that we walked in, the judge had already made up his mind. And that in this country is not supposed to happen. We are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And that is just not happening today. But I can almost guarantee you, or I can guarantee you, that if she gets a second chance to be out and be with her children and be the mother that they need and that she wants them to have, you will never see her darken the inside of a prison again unless it's to volunteer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ms. Wanda, for your remarks there. And, you know, your comments just exemplified a lot of the things that we've been talking about how incarceration not only affects the person that's incarcerated, but the entire family as well, too. And, you know, we could talk forever about the judicial system and how people are not, you know, considered innocent and proven guilty. Hoping that your daughter can get a second chance. Sounds like she is absolutely more than deserving of that at this point. Like, she's learned her lesson, and, you know, it's time for her to come home. And so, you know, hopefully we can get something worked out for her. And so next we will move on to Raheem. And I will let Raheem introduce himself, but Raheem, he is a survivor who lost his sister due to crime. And so I would just ask him, you know, like, from his perspective, and, you know, and he can tell you just a little bit more about who he is. What support, you know, does he think that people that, you know, that have been formerly incarcerated and who have family members that have been, you know, victims of crime, what do they need in order to heal? And why do you think Raheem's second chances are important in decarceration, particularly in this time?
Wow. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you to Free Hearts for this opportunity to participate in this panel and share. And that's a lot, Keita. And I'm just gonna try to see if I can find something that I can share. First of all, I was caged for 26 years of my life, from age 18 to 45, 46, all of my 20s, all of my 30s, part of my 40s. And what I learned about this system on the inside is that the 11th year that I was in prison, I became what our society deems to be a victim. I want to talk about that a little bit, but for this moment, I just want to say my sister was murdered in the year of 2000. The individual who killed my sister was attempting to kill my brother. He was given a 6-year sentence. He served his time, or did his time, in a CCA facility, and he was able to complete his sentence in less than 4 years, because he received 2 days for every 1 day that he served. And what happened was I had a transformative experience, because prior to that happening in my life, I didn't know what it felt like to be harmed when someone you love is taken away from you. And I went to prison because I took a life. And I remember like yesterday being at the wake, chained by my feet, by my waist, shackled, seeing my whole family and seeing my mother to the left, my family members, and I'm looking at my sister in this casket. And it was either in my head or whatever happened is I heard, this is what you did to someone else's family. And it was like everything just went silent. And that changed my life forever. That changed my family's life forever, because I had to go to my family, and I have brothers, 2 of whom just came home within the last 30 days. And they wanted to retaliate. But I said, for whatever you feel about him, you have to feel that about me. And although he was trying to kill my brother, I wasn't trying to kill someone. I shot a gun into the floor and the bullet ricocheted. And in Tennessee, it doesn't matter. Felony murder it can be a capital offense. And so what I want to say to everyone is that whoever controls the narrative pretty much decides how we exercise what we think justice is. And Keita, you mentioned it earlier, it's the language. And what our system does, it removes humanity from the person who causes harm and even the people who were harmed, because it makes you a perpetrator, a defendant. It turns a person who was harmed into a victim. In our case, my family, we see ourselves as survivors. My mother didn't have a say in what was going to happen in terms of how that case was prosecuted. But where we're from, we don't go to the law to decide, what should happen to somebody, because it's a different culture for people like myself growing up in what they may call the hood, in poverty, single parent mother, and just a lot of things go on that's totally different. And when you're thinking about motives and reasons why people are out engaging in conduct that we have deemed to be crimes, it's not the same thing for everyone. And that's part of the problem within the criminal injustice system, or the criminal legal system. This is the proper way to say it, is that one thing can happen and prosecutors who have extremely too much power can decide to charge someone at a high level of an offense just to use that as a bargaining tool, a weapon, to force an individual who was charged with an offense that you don't know was temporarily insane. You don't know he just heard that his mother had been raped. You don't know that it was his life or that person's life. You don't even know these individuals, because our system has become what I call assembly line justice, because people are no longer presenting their real truthful case about their lives. Just like what Ashley had mentioned earlier, they didn't even know her circumstances, that she was a girl caught up in a bad situation and she's tagging along. But because of the punitive nature and our addiction to revenge in this country, we let those who exercise authority and power, whether it's DAs or judges, decide what the meaning of justice is. I personally believe that justice includes mercy. I personally believe in a thing called community justice, transformative justice, restorative justice. The people should weigh in on how cases are resolved in the courtroom. And until we decide to humanize everyone in the process of what we call jurisprudence in America, we're going to continue to create more harm. We're not going to solve our problems. We're going to continue to cage more human beings. I know we say incarcerate, but I want to urge you not to use these sanitized terms that do not give true meaning to the experience of human beings right now who are caged in all of these prisons and jails in Tennessee. And I'm not saying people who are harmed do not have a voice or shouldn't have a voice. They should have a voice. But when they do not even get the opportunity to weigh in, as in Ashley's case, as in my case, the deal was already made with the victims in my case. And I'm saying victims because this is how they were styled. This is how they were labeled. They were told that I was gonna do 30 years in prison. I didn't have no knowledge of this. But my second attorney, of which I couldn't afford, public defender, pretty much set me up for the death penalty. Because prior to me even picking a jury trial, he said, well, you just cop out to this robbery and we're gonna move forward. And so I'm gonna just wrap this up by saying this. When it comes to what we call second chances, America has the audacity to punish its citizens when we have the type of history. Let's just start with chattel slavery and let's move through the history. 5,000 people lynched, nobody went to jail, prison, anything. We still have people suffering from the effects psychologically of slavery, because today we call it prison. But the 13th Amendment, it did not end slavery, it legalized slavery, except for those who've been duly convicted of a crime. America is the last nation on this planet, as far as I'm concerned, that should be holding people 100% responsible for every act that they commit. Because we have not only have we not apologized, but we have not repaired the damage of the historical harms, the atrocities. And yet we are treated as though if we do one bad thing, that's who we are for the rest of our lives. That's just not true. And so I not only believe in second chances and third chances and fourth chances, I believe in humanity. I believe in justice. And I think right now, because of what COVID-19 has done, meaning it has highlighted a lot of the things that we've been talking about for decades. And now it has forced the hands of those who exercise power, and not only in the city of Nashville, but all across the country. And the thing that we have to do as organizers, advocates, concerned individuals is to make our real voices known. Stop quoting all these numbers and 1,000 this and 30,000 or whatever, and start using our true narratives, our real life stories, because we are all part of this country, and our voices matter. And yes, we have to acknowledge that people have been harmed, at least in my case, but we have to find a way that we can move towards healing. And restorative, transformative justice is the best approach to administering what we call justice. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope I didn't go too long, but I'm always excited to join forces with people who care about people. And I want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you, Raheem. You know, everybody here on this panel, we all definitely believe in humanity. You had some good points there, as always. And so now we will turn it over to Dawn Harrington, who will take any questions that we have gotten throughout this time, and then she will also issue a call to action.
Hey everyone, so I'm just about to share my screen real quick.
Hello.
Oh. This has been such a great conversation today. I just want to thank all of our panelists. So if anyone, we don't have any questions in the chat right now, but if anyone has any questions, if you can drop them in the chat or in the live stream, that would be great.
Can I ask a question, Dawn?
Yes.
I'm just interested to know, Raheem, kind of what's the status of things in the Davidson County court system? I know there's been nationwide, there's been a lot of talk about doing away with money bail, at least during this pandemic, not keeping people in just because they can't afford bail. Do you feel like any progress is being made along those lines in Nashville among General Sessions Court judges? I mean, what are people saying?
So to be fair, the jail population in Nashville definitely has decreased, and I don't think it's because of any judges or DAs. I do know that Sheriff Hall made a decision to release a lot of people who he furloughed individuals, and then the public defender's office, the DAs, they began to talk and have conversations around the issue. But still, we have this problem with people getting these $4,000 and $5,000 and $6,000 bails, and they're not quote unquote violent charges. Just today, I paid a $2,500 bail for someone for a non-violent offense. And so, Preston, enough is not being done. You have these individuals who are commissioners or magistrates deciding a dollar amount on who should be released, who should be freed, and who should not be freed. See, this is not TCA statute. This is a decision. Somebody in a little bitty small room, a little portable down the street is saying, okay, $1,000 for you, $2,000 for you, $3,000 for you. And that's not right. Because if I have to pay for what the Constitution affords me, what is that saying about what we really think about justice? I do understand public safety, but let's be real. For every person who has a bail, if the money was available, they would make bail. So I just can't say anything positive about what who headed this was Judge Jones, who denied this petition that the chief public defender put before the courts to decarcerate even more. And she said no. And then they followed behind her. So I don't have anything positive to say about that, because if somebody dies in that jail who could have been released, but for the fact that they didn't have money, that is going to be a problem. So I just think they can do more, Preston.
Can I add something really quick? Because I testified the day that the public defenders brought that motion up. I testified as an expert witness, and I explained to the district attorney, I explained to Judge Jones, to all of them, what a COVID outbreak would look like in the Davidson County Jail. And at that time, we only had like 2 staff members, I think, that had been positive. And it's grown like tenfold since then. You know, we tried to make them understand. And then they brought up someone who was involved in like probations or parole. And they had her testify that of the 26 people who'd been released, which is a really marginal number, by the way, and it won't do anything to de-densify the jails. She came up and testified that of the 26 people who'd been released, 19 of them had no-showed for their probation hearing. And that the 7 people who showed up, 1 lady had showed up clearly altered. And so one of the reasons that Judge Jones had sort of identified was that was a public health risk. And I tried to impress it upon them that like one person showing up altered, like that's not nearly as a big a public health risk, I feel like, as a virus that has a mortality rate and a morbidity rate the way this one does. And, you know, Ashley had mentioned this too. It's not just about like how many people get sick and how many die, but it's also like, we don't know the long-term effects of SARS-CoV-2 on these populations as well. So afterwards, you know, we've kind of impressed it upon them that they need to do the right thing. And I've made it really clear that I'll come back and testify for anybody who does get sick in the jail, that I tried to get these people to do the right thing. So just keep that in mind, everybody that's on this panel, okay?
I have a question to anyone. Why should someone's life be put in danger to go see a probation officer, a parole officer, or anybody else at a time like this when we don't even know the nature of this virus? Why are we so addicted to controlling human beings and saying, okay, we're going to set you this arbitrary date, you show up, and if you don't show up, then see, that's the reason why we shouldn't let people go. But the fact of the matter is that over 90% of the people who have court dates show up for their court dates. That's just a fact. And as they talk about public safety, particularly in Nashville, 70% of what could be considered violent cases, domestic violence cases, are dismissed. And with the Nashville Community Bail Fund, over 53% of the cases that we pay bail for individuals, they're dismissed. So when we talk about this thing, when we say pretrial, we need to make it clear that no one has been convicted of a crime. You see, they have been charged with an offense. And until they have a day in court, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. And so for them to try to hide behind these robes and things that they say, well, you know, we can't do this because this is what's happening. Remember this, they all got elected. They all got elected. They can be unelected as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you so much. I saw one question in, actually it disappeared. Oh, there it goes. One question in the Facebook Live is around the parole board. And it's, how can we get the parole board to give us a better reason? I think this was in response to seriousness of the offense that was told by Tasha. I'm sorry, Natasha's mom, Wanda. And also, can we file suit against the parole board for failure to adequately perform their jobs? Does anybody want to answer that question?
Well, I'll say this about the parole board. Parole board members are appointed by the governor. And when we say like their job, it is true that at this point, it does not appear that they move to find whether or not a person is suitable to be released. It does appear that they look to find ways to deny people for parole for the very thing that maybe they were charged for. Can you sue the parole or board members or whatever? It happens all the time, but like DAs and judges, there's a certain level of immunity that parole board members have. But if they do violate your due process rights in relationship to that hearing, then that is a ground for a suit. But what we really need, if we want to bring about change, is to craft a bill by the people to decide who we want to be on the parole board and figure out ways that we can implement a policy change that can become laws so that people that look like this panel diversely can be on that parole board if we're going to have a parole board. But personally, I think the parole board is a waste of money. When we talk about $8.2 million being spent, we're talking about 7 individuals making over $100,000 a year. And then we're looking at a prison population where every year less than 5,000 people are being released. And yet we're having up to 14,000 parole hearings. And some of those hearings are what we call safety valve hearings. And that means those individuals aren't technically ready for parole. They get brought up early, and many of them are being denied beyond their release eligibility dates. And so, yes, we have a problem with the parole board, but it's going to take society as a whole to say we want something different and we deserve something different because we foot the bill for everyone in government, those who pay taxes. So just understand that they work for us.
Thank you so much, Raheem. And so I'm going to end with this last question that came in. And everyone, if you can give 1 minute each on 1 minute or less each on this question briefly. So where does this movement go from here, in your opinion? And I'll first pass it to Keita, and each one can pass to the next person.
I think I don't think this movement goes in one direction. I think there are various different directions that this movement can go in. You know, you have people on this call from various walks of life, various different professions, and I think that they can take this movement with them. You know, like for instance, like with Dr. Gaddy, you know, she can take the movement in one direction. You've got activists that can take the movement in one direction. You know, just different things like that. And so I do agree with what Raheem said, is that it's definitely going to take all of us. And personally, myself, what I would like to see is for somebody in the legislature to step up and to say, we're going to draft legislation around this as far as decarceration and COVID is concerned. That is what I would like to see done. Just on that level. I mean, we are here in Tennessee. I don't expect it to get very far, but that is something, because our legislators have been very quiet around this issue. We have some that are asking questions, but not a whole lot. Again, it's just something that I repeatedly say, that people that are incarcerated right now, they are being left out of these conversations that we are having around that. And so, I would just, like to see us take this in various different directions to really, really push for decarceration, of our family, friends, and loved ones around COVID-19. And so I think that I know we have conversations, but I think that we really need to, start looking at some things. I think it's time to really pressure the governor, about him using his powers that he's able to use during this time. And so I think that, we've talked a lot, but it's really time for us to put some things in action when it comes to decarceration around our family, friends, and loved ones that are, currently still in prison.
Okay, and I'm gonna go to Michelle.
And repeat the question.
Sorry, someone asked, where does the movement go from here? So in your mind, where does the movement go from here?
Where does the movement go from here? I agree with what Miss Keita said. We need to reach and get support from those that have the authority to change the policies, to implement some basic decarceration policies to allow, and we've got to keep pushing. We can't stop. And trying an overhaul of the parole board would be fabulous. We need more community involvement in those parole hearings to get people out. But, and there again, we need more programs to prevent incarceration to begin with, to prevent the trauma, prevent the abuse, and I think where we go from here is trying to stop it on both ends, trying to stop it before it happens, interrupt what has happened, and prevent it from happening again.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I'll go to Jahara. She might have stepped away.
No, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Where do we go from here? I say let's continue to get involved with Free Hearts, with Unheard Voices, and there's some more organizations that are affiliated with the criminal justice reform, and just really get involved. Contact your local senators, congressmen, legislators at the Capitol, so you can get involved, know who your representatives are, know who you're voting for, know about the policies that's being brought forth, and just really having a voice, because we are the people. We vote for people to be in office, so it's up to us to hold those people accountable for their actions. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I'm going to our next panelist, which was Ashley Sellers.
Thank you. I feel like I'm echoing a lot of what everybody else has already said. I'm going to say that we need to organize and we need to educate. I think for too long, people who have been incarcerated have been beat down and said, like, you're not worth anything. This is what you were destined to be. Your voice isn't worth anything. This is all you're ever going to be. And so people come out of that incarceration really kind of wanting to forget that experience the best that they can, because it's just been so repetitively traumatizing. Instead, I think that we really just need to pick up those pieces and we need to lean into that trauma a little bit in telling people what really happens inside. Oftentimes we want to spare our families from what really goes on, and it becomes a normal of just of what incarceration looks like, instead of saying, like, these are all of the things that we really do to people, right? We talked about language on this panel. Language is so important. It's really important if you come out not to call yourself a felon or a convict or any of those things. You are a person who has been incarcerated, because that language allows us to dehumanize people. It allows us to treat them less than. So we need to start picking up then. We need to research the organizations that are available statewide. I would give a little pushback against us just taking immediate action. I would say we really need to find the people who have been on the front lines of this stuff, who have the education, who have the process and the procedures to be able to address it head on and see how we can fit. And then just continue this conversation. Tomorrow, tell somebody about something that stuck out to you today. Just continue to make a change the normal instead of that avoidance.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to pass it to Elena.
Hey, I guess my answer to this question will reflect off of everybody else, but it will also say, where do we move from here? You can't move anywhere if you haven't started with yourself, period. So I feel like if you want to make a change to the whole world, you have to start with yourself. You can't try to change everybody without changing yourself first. And, it's just like Ashley said, just spread it on to everybody and talk more about it. The more it's talked about, the more it will be looked at and the more we can do something about it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Brilliant, Elena. And I'm going to Ronnie.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And I'm also picking back off of everyone else. I think the main focus is to just educate and uplift everyone, letting them know what's going on, getting people motivated to go out there to listen and help change the laws and get involved.
Thank you, Ronnie. And I'm going to Preston.
It's like a groundhog.
Yeah, I think short term, the governor has the authority to do a lot in response to this crisis in the short term. My boss at the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth is about to publish an op-ed in the Washington Post calling on governors across the nation to make liberal use of their clemency power to get people out of prisons. A lot of state legislatures are currently shut down, and so laws are not going to be passed short term, apart from U.S. Congress. Not many laws are going to be passed dealing with this, and it takes too long anyway. But governors, if they have guts and vision, they can do it. And so I think that calling the governor's office and letting the governor know, the governor ran on a platform around criminal justice reform. Let the governor know that he's got cover, that you as a Tennessee citizen want him to let people out. And then looking ahead more long term, lawmakers want to know that they're not going to get thrown out of office. And if they start hearing from their constituents that if you call up William Lambert and you say, Mr. Lambert, I think it's important for us to pass common sense sentencing reform. Help him understand that a little bit. Take 5 minutes and leave a message for him and let him know that you, as a Tennessee citizen who hasn't just totally gone off the deep end, but you think that it's important that we give second chances to people, and keep that conversation going. So that would be my advice, to just keep talking about it.
Thank you, Preston. And I'm going to Dr. Jennifer Gaddy.
So kind of echoing what other people said, I think that there's a lot that we can do to make our voices heard, and doing the education. I like what Ashley said too about speaking your truth about the brutality of these, of where you've spent some time, I believe in a diversity of tactics. I think that electoral politics are limiting. And so if you focus all of your energy on that, they're designed to wear you down, right? And to not make social changes. So we need some grassroots movements in how we see, how we handle social ills, and harm, which Raheem has spoken a lot about this. We need to get out of this mindset of confinement with people. It's not good for our communities. It's not good for the individuals that we're confining. So I would encourage everybody to do intersectional advocacy for people. And I would encourage anybody that's out there watching right now that looks like me to not play respectability politics and only swim in the seas of the people that are like you, that have PhDs and that are academics, or things like that, to actually engage with the people who've been incarcerated or are incarcerated right now, to hear their stories, to lift their voices up, and to use whatever platforms and privilege you have to try and shake things up and move the needle on change, because I'd like to see decarceration in my lifetime.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gaddy. And let me pass to Wanda. Same question. Oh, we can't hear you, Wanda. Let me see if I can help you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I really don't have a lot to add. Everybody has pretty well covered it, but I do believe that the governor is where we're going to have to start with, because his mindset is going to have to be changed. He's already looked at prisoners as second-class citizens and not anybody to be considered when it comes to protecting them from the coronavirus. So we're going to, somehow or another, he's going to have a mind change. But it's going to be a long process. Anytime you deal with politics, it's not anything quick.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Wanda.
Okay.
And let me pass it to Raheem.
So for me, it's about building power. It's about building community power. And community means every one of us, regardless of our race, ethnicity, religion, coming together in what we believe is the right way to go, and deciding how we want justice, what we want it to look like. That's the simple version. That's one thing that's very important to me right now as I talk to formerly incarcerated individuals who are tuned in and who are on this panel. There are more than 400,000 individuals who can't vote. We need at least 100,000 of you to step up, sign up, participate, and donate. Because when we can put forth some effort to build some finances, people gonna pay attention because we can make some things happen. So we need to build some power. Power is people, okay? That's what we need to do.
Thank you so much, Raheem. And so I'm just gonna share this real quick to, I think this is, okay. Okay, I'm having, oh, here we go, share, sorry. Okay, so just a few calls to action from us. Join the movement. If you're interested, if this panel has given you any inspiration, you can always email us at info@freeheartsorg.com. If you want to connect with any of the panelists, we can also help to connect you as well. Again, that email is info@freeheartsorg.com. You can also follow us on social media at freeheartsorg. And a few other ways to get involved are, one, as Preston and others have mentioned, contact Governor Bill Lee and ask him to use his clemency powers to decarcerate. You can also demand this of the Tennessee Board of Parole, DAs, and judges to decarcerate broadly. Also, if you have a loved one who is incarcerated, you can attend participatory defense. We have it every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central, where we work on strategies to bring our loved ones home. We are the Nashville hub of the National Participatory Defense Movement, and now our participatory defense is online. And so if you email us, info@freeheartsorg.com, we can connect you with either our hub or the closest hub to where you're located. Also, we have Tennessee Organizing for Power statewide, and we are a member of that coalition at Free Hearts. And if you can sign on to our statewide demands at bit.ly COVID-10. And then last but not least, we have a petition with the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, asking governors to use their clemency powers. And the link to that is bit.ly Clemency Works 10. And so I would like to thank everyone for their time. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to continuing this conversation, and that second chances does mean decarceration in COVID-19 and beyond. And we look forward to holding our elected officials accountable to that belief. So thank you for your time and have a great rest of the day.